Thank you for taking the time to talk to me. I know you don't even know me. We know mutual people. I know Paul Wittenberger. I think he's interviewed you a few times for some films and stuff like that. Matt Powell. I've met him once or twice here. So I just wanted to talk to you because I am a longtime fan. I've been listening, watching your videos since the early 2000s.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, my wife and I, when we were first meeting, our dating consisted of going through all your seminars and completely solidified our faith in creation science, and just it became our thing. We wound up teaching your Hovind theory to kids and youth groups and things like that. It was just amazing. So thank you so much for joining me. What my podcast is called Rediscover People, where we talk to people who have kind of rediscovered themselves through the things that they do and the job that they do. They rediscover their calling and stuff. So I just wanted to talk with you because I haven't seen a lot of your videos. I know that you were taken down from YouTube last year. Is that right?
Well, we came up the very next day on a new channel, Genesis Baptist Church.
Oh, okay. Okay,
We've been up ever since, yep.
Oh, good. Okay, yeah, so I have watched all your original seminars way back when. As a matter of fact, and here's a quick testimony for you, is my best friend, who has since passed away now, but he was completely atheist. We grew up together from 16 years old. In 2017, he heard your Hovin theory, completely understood what it was about, and gave his life to Christ. So
Amen.
That was awesome. Yeah. So I kind of wanted to get to know you a little better. In a lot of your seminars, you say, hey, so I was a science school teacher for 15 years, and then you started the ministry. What got you from leaving high school teaching to go into the ministry kind of full time?
Well, I was in California teaching science and math, and I was school principal. And my wife, there was some problems with the church. The pastor was going kind of liberal and stuff. And my wife said, I want to finish my music degree. We got to get out of here before this church splits or collapses. I said, okay, where do you want to go? She said, Pensacola. I said, where's that? She said, Florida. I said, oh, okay, we got to move clear across the country. Three kids and a dog. Anyway, so we did. We moved to Pensacola, January of '89. And I was just doing construction work to put the family through school. I'm really good with carpentry work. And the neighbor kid across the street said, hey, do you want to take the paper? I throw the newspaper. I said, no, I don't have a parakeet. It's all it's good for that I know of. So anyway, he said, well, I'll throw them in the yard if I have an extra. He kept throwing papers in the yard. And one of them came out one day. It said dinosaur bones found in Montana from 80 million years ago or something like that. So I wrote my first ever letter to the editor. Brand new in Pensacola. Nobody knows me here. Let's go ahead and stir up trouble,
Sure.
So I wrote a letter. Said, these dinosaur bones are from one that drowned in the flood. The earth is not millions of years old. Dinosaurs lived with man all through history. They called them dragons or some other name. And some may still be alive. Anyway, they published my letter and kicked the hornet's nest in Pensacola. Atheists came out of the woodwork writing letters back about mine. And it went back and forth for several months that way, letters to the editor. Finally, some students at the University of West Florida, UWF, called me and said, Mr. Hovind, would you be willing to come debate one of our professors? Our anthropology professor is reading all your letters to the editor in our class and making fun of him. Would you be willing to debate him? I said, I've never had a debate in my life except with my wife. I lose those every time, but sure. So I did my first ever debate and slaughtered the poor guy. I thought, they can't all be this easy. They really are. I've had 358 debates now. I'll take on anybody you can find. The Bible is true. Evolution is stupid and dangerous. And so when I did that debate, there's probably 1,100 or 1,000 or 1,200 people there at the university came to watch, and a bunch of pastors were there. Afterwards, they said, wow, would you come share this creation material at our church? I'd been collecting material for years, teaching science. I love this stuff. I never dreamed to be a full-time ministry. And it just exploded into a full-time ministry. I was traveling, speaking 900 times a year all over the world. Went to 37 countries teaching on science and the Bible. Just keep it simple.
So
the other creation ministries, I read all the stuff by Henry Morris and Dwayne Gish and all those creation guys. And I knew their material, but I said, somebody's got to dumb this down to fourth grade level. Because they use all the big words, and when you get done listening to him, you say, wow, he's really smart. What did he say? You know? So my niche in the creation ministry is making it simple where everybody can understand it.
Well, that's absolutely true. That's where we just loved all your seminars. I'm curious, when you were in teaching high school science, you said you had collected all this information and stuff. Were you teaching it to the kids in the school?
No, I taught in Christian schools the whole time.
Okay.
I've spoken in many public high schools, and public high school teachers are not required to teach the entire book. You can't do that, okay? They can skip sections if they want, and many do. Many Christian teachers just skip that. Or when something comes up that's been proven wrong, like the embryo having gill slits, proven wrong 140 years ago, they'll tell the students, hey, our book says this, but this is not accurate. I tell kids, if you're in public school and the teacher says, you know, what's the evidence for evolution from embryos? You should answer, the textbook says, blah, 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 however, this is not correct. The teacher knows you learned the material, you passed the test, but you don't believe it. They can make you learn it, they can't make you believe it.
Yeah. So speaking of dinosaurs, has there been anything since long ago when you did those seminars? Because I think I watched the ones from like 2004. Has there been any updates, any difference in the things that you've learned since then that you've now discovered that add to it or take away from that seminar at all?
Yeah, there have been quite a few unfossilized dinosaurs found. Fresh dinosaur tissue still found. Blood cells still available. There's a lot on the unfossilized dinosaur material. Dinosaur skeletons that are found still have meat on the bones, this kind of stuff. So that's something I didn't cover back then, but I will now. It's been 20 years ago. Also, there have been a lot more sightings of dinosaurs, like especially pterodactyls. There have been quite a few people have seen 25-foot wingspan pterodactyls.
Wow.
So I'm so busy on other stuff, I haven't had time to put all that together. Sure. I thought the seminar that I did on dinosaurs, part 3, I spent thousands of hours on that. I did the best I could. I kept it updated to 2004, and I haven't had time really to spend a lot more time on that. I'm busy doing debates with atheists and stuff like that. So I'll let somebody else take that ball and run with it.
All right. Speaking of those debates, how did you become so proficient in PowerPoint way back in the 90s to where you could be in debates? I watched you and you saw everything they were saying, and then you just brought up these slides. Like you had them all memorized where they were. How did you do that, or how did you organize that?
Well, I started off with an overhead projector. I had, papers. I would have an overhead projector, lay the paper on, and show it up on the wall. And I had a whole stack. So I had them all numbered, Oh, I got to go to number 85 and pull it out, stick it on the overhead. Then I went to a slide projector, circular slide projector. I thought I died and went to heaven. Man, I could just, move it to slide number 555 and hit, and show slides. But the problem was I kept adding new material. And I ended up with 12 carousels of slides.
Oh, gosh.
I had to carry them all with me. And whenever I wanted to add a slide on carousel number 1, I had to move all of them back for 12 carousels. I'd move them all back one. So
wow.
It became, I spent millions of hours on that. Then when they come out with PowerPoint, I really thought I died and went to heaven, because no more slide carousels. Wow. And so I work on PowerPoint every day. I add stuff to it. I'm always getting wild ideas to add into my, I want this seminar to be sharp. I want it to be the best. I want to win souls. And so you can get all my slides. I think it's 45 or 50,000 now, for $100 on a thumb drive.
Oh, wow. And that's on your store, right, at drdino.com?
That's in our store, yeah, drdino.com.
Yeah. So
he sent all the links, he said.
Yeah, okay, awesome. Thank you. When you did that first debate, what year was that? How long ago was that?
That was 1989 or 90. Sergio Stephen's doing the research on that. I'd been in Pensacola. January of 89 is when I moved there, and I was working construction. So somewhere late 89, I think, my first debate.
Okay. So I had watched those debates. I mean, I'd watched like some of your debates, and then I'd watched all your seminars, and then that was in 2004. And then I started watching them again, showed them to my children, and so now they're like solid on that stuff. Then I met my wife from my second marriage, and that's what when we started just digging into them. But I had to break it to her because I think at the time you were in prison.
Yeah.
And so, I know that you came out with a lot of books while you were in there, one about the end times, one, and then I noticed some other books that I haven't read yet, which I just purchased. Why in the world did this happen? Or is this happening to me? Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about those?
Well,
there we go.
This is the book, Why on Earth Did God Let This Happen, for Heaven's Sake? As I was in prison, I was constantly thinking up ideas of other people that had similar experiences in the Bible, like Daniel, hauled off to captivity, made a eunuch. Look that up. His whole life has changed radically. And what do? He said, well, I'm going to keep serving God. Half the Bible's written from prison. So I said, God, maybe you want to use this for a reason. So I began writing with email. You can talk to anybody in the world if they're still alive. So I made up a whole new app called Email. On your knees, you can talk to anybody in the past or present or future. So I started writing letters to people in the Bible and getting their response. Here's how I thought they would respond. For instance, I don't know how many, just this one book. This is only book one. There are 7 books. This one probably has 40 different people. I wrote to John the Baptist. I wrote to Philip and Joseph and Cain and Abel and Shem and Bildad and Job and Moses. And one I did, the castle, is writing to the chess master. Why did you move me here? You know, the chess piece.
Oh.
So the chess piece is writing to the master. Why did you move me here? This is dangerous. They're going to be able to take me out here. And the master said, look, I know what I'm doing. Just trust me. Yes, they're going to come over and take you, and that opens up the queen on this side, and I'm going to win the game. We don't sometimes know why God's doing what he's doing. Just trust him. So it's just little simple short stories. Most of them are 1 or 2 pages. And this is book 1. We have book 2 as available as an ebook. Is that right, Joseph? And that's as far as it got. We have several more languishing in data heaven. We need to get somebody to finish book 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But it's simple letters. Many people read this and just cry and say, man, this just answers the question. This helps a lot. I wrote to myself in the future. I wrote to my childhood Kent. So it's just a simple little letter written from God to Mrs. Job, Job's wife. She's wondering, why did this happen to my husband? He's a godly man. You took everything away. Why, God? So she and God have a conversation. Or God writes a letter to her. She doesn't get to respond. I see your prayers and broken heart. I know you grieve. You've lost all your children, your wealth, your security. Your heart's broken as you see your husband suffer day after day.
Wow.
But I'm not going to tell you why. When you get to heaven, I'll show you.
Well, and a lot of times we don't, when we're in the middle of these things, a lot of people don't realize this is part of the bigger plan that God has. And that's why I love the title, like, for heaven's sake, right? Everything should be for his glory and for his sake, right? So I love that. And speaking of, Job, I love the way that you say those are written, because it's kind of like Job talking to his friends and Job talking to God, just like the book of Job, right? So you also wrote one about the end times, and I believe that you kind of changed your mind or rediscovered the way you thought about the end times while in there. Can you talk a little bit about that? Yeah.
What on earth is about to happen, for heaven's sake? I wrote this book on the topic. I did a video series on it, What on Earth is About to Happen, for heaven's sake. No, that's why did God let this happen. Here we go. Whoa, what on earth is about to happen? And then I made a chart dealing with that topic. I used to believe in what's called the pre-tribulation rapture. And I believed it for 40 years because that's what was taught in the Schofield Bible and the Stake Study Bible and all those study Bibles. As I really began to study this, I found out the whole idea of here's this yellow stripe is the tribulation time, the 7 years. It's a great expansion of this little bitty yellow stripe here spread out to show the details. The church has always taught we get raptured out after the tribulation, before the wrath of God falls on the earth. Christians are guilty of confusing wrath and tribulation. Tribulation is what the world does to us. Wrath is what God does to the world. We're not appointed unto wrath, it says in Titus. But Jesus said in John 16, in the world ye shall have tribulation. So back in 1830, a 15-year-old girl in Scotland had a dream. that we get raptured out before the tribulation. And that girl's dream spread like wildfire through the church, and Dake Study Bible and Schofield and all those guys spread it, and it became standard theology among a lot of Christians that the pre-tribulation rapture. And it all came from a 15-year-old girl's dream. Her name was Margaret McDonald. Well, as I read, especially the book by Roland Rasmussen, I spoke at Rasmussen's church in Canoga Park, California, and he said, Brother Hovind, I'd like you to read my book. He just gave it to me, and they took me off to prison. Had my wife send it in to me, and I read it and read it. I read it 5 or 6 or 7 times, I think. It's a pretty good-sized book. I wrote to Brother Rasmussen and said, Brother, you are correct. I'm sorry, I've been teaching something wrong for 40 years. I had to change my theology. In Matthew chapter 24, at the beginning of the chapter, Jesus' disciples said, Lord, when are you coming, and what's the sign we should watch for? Mark 13, same thing. When are you coming? What's the sign? Luke 21, same thing. When are you coming, and what's the sign? He describes the tribulation time for 20 verses, and at the end of each passage, here it is, Matthew 24, 29. Immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light. And the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heaven shall be shaken, and then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. He shall send his angels with the great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the 4 winds. That's the rapture. When does the rapture come? They asked him, when are you coming? What's the sign? He told them, I'm coming after the tribulation when the sun and the moon go dark. It couldn't be more clear. I missed it for 40 years. So I went through and I searched, when does the sun and the moon go dark? That is mentioned 10 times in the Bible, the sun and the moon going dark. Revelation chapter 6. See, if you look at the book of Revelation, just remember STV. There are 7 seals, 7 trumpets, and 7 vials. At the 6th trumpet, the sun and the moon go dark. Then we're here for the first 5. Read Revelation. I wish it wasn't true. I'd like to get raptured out today, okay? I'm tired.
Sure.
But we're here for the whole tribulation. So I made some enemies out of my Baptist friends. I'm independent Baptist. I said, guys, this is why we're independent. I can believe what I want. I don't care what you think. Okay?
Absolutely. Well, and then there was, and I think a lot of it had to do with Schofield teaching, right? But there's a lot to be said about who is the elect, right? They like to say it's the children of Israel. It's Israel today, that kind of thing. And I think that's how they easily dismiss it, right? What do you say back to them, or how quickly can you refute that? Because I know you can probably do it quick.
God chose Abraham to, as the world is filling up full of people, this is after the flood, a couple hundred years, God decided, I'm going to work with one man and one country, Israel, to be the model for the rest of the world. And it was Israel's job to be the model and to spread God's word to the whole planet. And so for about 2,000 years, God used the Jews as his chosen people. They did not do a very good job of spreading the gospel. Actually, they hoarded it to themselves, and God had to punish them over and over again. So God said, okay, I'm going to take this natural olive branch, which is not bearing fruit. I'm going to break it off and put in a wild olive branch, the Gentiles. So we've had about 2,000 years now of the Gentiles being God's primary method of spreading his word. We're not doing a very good job. He's going to take us off and put the natural olive branch back in. The Jews have always been God's people. They still are today. They're still rebellious and dumb and not doing their job, but they're still God's people. God's not done with them. And we should pray for the peace of Jerusalem.
Amen. So, that being said, I know some people look at it like, them being engrafted, or them being part of the olive branch into the vine and us being engrafted in has to do with a belief in Christ. So is them coming back, them believing in Christ at that point? Or what do you think about that?
When they see him come back and split the Mount of Olives and make the Dead Sea come to life, that's when they're going to say, oh, this is the Messiah. When Jesus came on the Mount of Olives riding on a donkey, they all said, yay, here comes the king. Yay. 3 days later, they crucified him. He said, oh, you don't want your king? Okay, I'll take you guys, set you aside. I'll graft in the Gentiles. Let's see what they can do. And we've not done a real good job of spreading the gospel like we're supposed to. And he's going to take us out and put the Jews back in. They're going to all be converted in one day when they see him descend on the mount, and the mount split in half.
Okay.
They're going to realize, oh no. I've heard Jews
Yeah.
say, we'll accept any Messiah except Jesus. I mean, if Donald Trump came down on the mountain, they'd believe it, you know.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess that has a lot to do with the Talmud and the teachings of Jesus in the Talmud,
Right.
I assume, right? So, what do you think about the 1,000-year reign of Jesus Christ, and what do you think is going around outside the? This is just an interesting question I like to ask, like around outside the gates, because I mean, towards the end, there's still like a war that tries to come there,
Well, yeah.
right? So, yeah.
At the end of the tribulation, the Lord comes back. There's a battle of Armageddon. He comes down first to catch up his believers. That's the rapture. He doesn't touch down to the earth. He blows the trumpet and calls us up. About 3 years later is when he comes all the way down to the Mount of Olives, and Mount of Olives splits in half. So that's called the second advent. There's actually two parts to his second coming. First part is only to the clouds, called the rapture. We go up to the marriage supper of the Lamb for about 3 years, while the wrath of God falls on the world. The last 1,000 years of world history is called the Day of the Lord. There are 6,000 years of human history, and we're about done with those, and then a 1,000-year Day of the Lord. But if you read all the verses, I got hundreds of them here about the Day of the Lord. Sometimes the Day of the Lord is referred to as a day of wrath, a day of judgment. Other times it's a day of great blessing and peace, peace on earth, goodwill toward men. The Day of the Lord has two parts. The wrath of God falls in the first 3 years, and then the 1,000-year reign of Christ on earth. Now, I come up with the number 3 years. This racked my brain for months while I was in prison, spending hours and hours studying this. In the middle of the tribulation, that would be 3.5 years after it starts, middle of the 7-year period, Antichrist breaks the treaty. At the same time, the two witnesses showed up, and the temple is desolate. The temple is desolated. In Daniel chapter 8, Daniel said, Lord, how long will the temple be desolate? He said, 2,300 days. Usually it talks about, 1,260 days being half of 7 years. But that one prophecy, Daniel 8:14, 2,300 days. Well, that would run on past the tribulation time by about 1,040 days. So there's 1,040 days of God's wrath being poured out while we're up at the marriage supper. We don't know what's going on. Let God do his thing on earth. At the end of that, we come down with Jesus on white horses, touch down on the Mount of Olives, which splits in half, and this is the Battle of Armageddon. Satan is quickly defeated, and he's cast into the pit, Revelation 20, verse 1 through 7. He's in the pit for the whole 1,000 years. At the end of now, keep in mind, when we come down with Jesus, there's a lot of unsaved people in the world. And so we come down, and we get to rule and reign over whatever you've been faithful for. If you're really faithful, you get to be the mayor of Lenox or something, Everybody gets their governor of Alabama or something.
Sure.
So it'll be Christians ruling the world. Ruling what world? Ruling a lot of the heathen that are still here. The heathen lived through this, some of them, and they're still having kids and grandkids. So at the end of that 1,000 years, when Satan is released from the pit, he's still able to gather up an army of people that hate God. And now God settles the score.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. I was going to ask, do you think those are people that are more like conspiracy theorists, so they didn't take the mark and all that kind of thing? But I suppose they have kids, and the mark's already not happening anymore, right? For a lot of those 1,000 years anyway. So I guess that makes sense.
Well, when Jesus rules, there won't be any mark, that's for sure.
Sure.
Yeah, but there is going to be enough heathen on the planet that Satan can still quickly raise up an army, one quick battle, and they're gone. God settles it. See, Satan starts off going to hell for 1,000 years. Then he's cast into the lake of fire, which is a different place. Hell is the temporary holding place, and then the lake of fire is the permanent place. It's like if you commit a crime, they arrest you, they take you to jail to await your trial. After trial, they send you to prison. Prison is for long-term holding. Jail is up to 1 year max, usually. So hell is the temporary place where people go now. After the judgment, they're sent to the lake of fire. That's the permanent place. But I cover all that in my book, and I racked my brain on this, brother.
How did that feel though? Like, because you're like completely changing your theology, you're psychologically and spiritually, you're going through a transformation. Like, how did you wrestle with that?
Well, I decided years ago, I want the truth. Wherever the truth is, I want to stand right there. If I find out I'm standing in the wrong spot, I'll move over. I'm not independent Baptist because I'm dependent on anybody else for my salary. I want God to be happy. I read the book as best I can. I try to understand it. If I don't know what a topic says, I say, I don't know. Move on to something else. There's quite a few things in the Bible I still do not understand.
Sure.
Like one preacher said, it's not the stuff I don't understand that bothers me. It's the stuff I do understand that bothers me.
So I started a small church, and it's called Rediscover Church. And the whole idea is that, we need to rediscover our calling. From the foundations of the world, we were called. God had a plan, and then he created us at such a time as this to fulfill it, right? And I get a lot of that from, I was struggling when I was younger, like, well, what's my purpose? What am I supposed to be doing? As you can see, I have a lot of movie stuff. I was young, and all I wanted to do was films, but then I got the calling of God, and then I was like, well, what do I do? And I remember hearing in your seminar, or one of your videos, where you said, if you want to know your purpose in life, just look around, find a need, and fill it.
Yeah.
And it actually completely just blew my mind, and it's helped me. So I repeat that to so many people, because they also struggle. And I'm like, look, the one things that we can control is where we were born, who we were born to, and when we were born, right? So you're here where you are for a reason. Just look around. Gosh, is that something that you felt throughout all this time that you've been, ever since you went into prison, come out now, and you have the new Dinosaur Adventureland? Is that how you look at life still? Yeah.
I think the center of the battlefield between Satan and the Lord is this evolution creation. This is Satan's favorite tool. Satan is using dinosaurs, God's own creatures, to turn people away from God. And so I think that I can't think of a more important battle going on than the creation-evolution battle. Now, which part of that battle does Kent Hovind fit into? Well, my job, I think, is to be a teacher and to dumb it down where everybody can say, wow, I understand. I can explain trigonometry to a 10-year-old, and they'll get it. It's a gift of teaching, and I'm worried. I'm saying, I know God, when I get to heaven, God's going to say, Kent, I gave you this much, and you did this much. What happened in here?
Yeah.
Oh, Lord, I was lazy. What else you want to hear?
Well, and speaking of that kind of ministry, I was sad to watch and hear your, I guess they had you on a podcast with Steven Anderson sometime in February, March. I don't know when it was. And I was very
shocked.
Oh, yeah, I was shocked, too. What is going on here? But I've seen him do that a couple of years prior to Matt Powell, because they were going to come on Paul Wittenberger's podcast and talk about creation. And I think Matt was younger, and he was excited. And I remember seeing Steven Anderson do the same thing to him. And that was when I stopped pretty much listening to him. I was like,
yeah.
Wow, why? So what do you say to something like that he doesn't even think that should even be a ministry, apparently, right?
Well, Matt Powell used to go to his church, okay, and I spoke at Steve Anderson's church. And Matt Powell lived here for, 6 or 8 months, and moved back to Michigan, but I think he's eventually going to come back here, maybe take over for me when I die. Anyway, but I was totally blindsided by Steven Anderson. He's all upset about my chart, my timeline. He thinks I got some number wrong on there.
Oh, yeah, about the children of Israel, how long they were in captivity, right? I think he said. He said that your chart says something about 200 years or something like that. Yeah.
Well, you got to start the 430 years from when Abraham was down there, and I cover all that on my YouTube channel back in February, I guess, whenever it was. But it's certainly not worth fighting over, I don't think. I think my chart's right, he's wrong, but that's okay. Everybody has a right to be wrong if they want.
Well, interestingly enough, he's said a few things like, science has helped him bring people to Christ, especially when they come against, flat earthers, right, for example. But then on that podcast, he seems to say, well, I don't have to refute anything. I just say God made it that way, and there's no reason to even get into any of the science at all. How do you feel about that stance, and how do you feel that, do you think that's going to help anyone, or what do you think?
Well, everybody has different methods of reaching. God has prepared each of us to reach a certain slice of the population. it's difficult for me to reach the Chinese people because I don't speak Chinese. Okay? I have certain skills and talents that I can reach a certain slice of this 8 billion people on the world. I'm going to try to reach all I can. You probably can reach people that I cannot reach, right? I can now reach people that have been to prison. I understand, been there, done that. I don't want to do it again. But
Sure.
So I think everybody can reach somebody, and we should all do our job. In the military, if you're in battle, you can't possibly fight the whole enemy by yourself, but you can shoot the guy in front of you, okay? If somebody's on the machine gun and they're a really good shot, I'm not going to waste time trying to take over their job. I'm going to carry bullets for them. I'm going to carry them food. I'm going to, bring them water.
Sure.
I'm going to do something to help them. They're already a good shot. Some people are already great snipers. Okay, help them. Bring them the bullets. Bring them their food. Do something for them. I think God calls some people to lead a ministry. Other people he calls to help the leader of that ministry. God called, when Saul was called to be king in 1 Samuel, it says there went with him a band of men whose hearts God had touched. God touched a bunch of men and said, you follow that guy. When Moses was up on the mountain holding up the stick, his arms got weary. Aaron and Hur came over. They pulled a big rock under him, set him down, held up his arms. That's the best thing they could have done.
Yeah. One of the conversations that continued to happen on that podcast was about the moon and about the craters. And his belief is that, God made it already with craters, right? And there was some talk about whether or not that was deceitful or not, and that kind of thing. I wish you could have talked a little more about that, because the entire time in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, I guess I can understand, obviously, that God made a tree already grown up, an atom already grown up, that kind of thing. But what would be the purpose of having craters on a moon?
To me, that's deceitful. Yeah. Having rings in the tree is necessary because the rings of the tree do not indicate the age. They give it it's called the laminate effect, like plywood. You have a soft ring, hard ring, soft ring, hard ring, soft ring, hard ring. If it's all soft rings, the tree would fall over. It couldn't stand up. If it was all hard rings, the tree would snap. It couldn't flex in the wind. By giving it a combination of both, it's flexible and strong. So I think that's a necessary feature. Adam and Eve were full grown. God didn't make an egg and a sperm in the garden and say, I hope you find each other. Okay? Where are they going to grow up? Where are they going to get together? So Sure. It has to be a mature creation. The first day when Adam woke up, from his sleep, there's trees with fruit on them. Now, that's not deceitful. That's necessary. Okay?
Sure.
But to put craters on the moon, I don't know where he got that one from. And it's certainly not worth fighting over. I wouldn't fight anybody over that. I would say, look, that's crazy. I don't believe you. That's deceitful for God to do that. But it's not worth splitting the church over and losing a friendship over.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I just couldn't figure out, I got all the other stuff like you're saying. I just couldn't figure out, but why craters on the moon? Why is that necessary to show time or whatever?
Just to be contentious, I think. Yeah.
Sure. I want to talk about your Hovin theory a little bit, if that's okay. Again, I heard the 2004 version. I also loved your question and answers. I learned so much from that. I am a subscriber to the Hovin theory, lifelong.
Okay.
So just so you know, but has there been any things since then? I mean, I know your theology has changed on end times and things like that. That has changed, do you think, or anything that you can add to that you would probably add if you could go back and do those videos again?
I used to teach, and that an ice meteor came in, and that's what caused the ice caps at the North and South Pole. That still may be true. I don't know. But I think another thing to add to that is the crystalline canopy itself. The earth used to be surrounded by a crystalline canopy. The Bible says pretty clearly there was water above the firmament, and the birds fly in the firmament. If that canopy got shattered by the fountains of the deep breaking open, shooting rocks up, shattering this glass roof, greenhouse roof, super cold ice would tend to be sucked in and dumped on the North and South Pole. And the Earth's magnetic field is centered around the magnetic North Pole, which is in Canada, not the geographic North Pole where we spin. We spin around this spot, but the magnetic field all points to the northern Canada. And that magnetic pole is moving, from time to time. The ice age, the effects of the glaciers and things, you can see them clear down to southern Illinois. You got them all over Michigan. Your area is covered with ice. So I think I would put more emphasis on the canopy itself being the ice that's dumped on the poles rather than an ice meteor. I see three choices. One, it was an ice meteor that did that. We know the universe is full of ice meteors flying around. Two, it was just the canopy itself that did it. Or three, it was both together. Again, not worth arguing about, but we do know that there's overwhelming evidence of animals that are found frozen standing up.
Yeah.
They had to be buried in a 50-foot snowfall that took place in a few hours. Okay? And the really cold, I mean, way colder than normal snow, like 400 below zero Fahrenheit snow. And we know that that piling up of the snow would start pushing out like a bulldozer and plow rocks ahead of it. When the ice melts back, it leaves the rocks, terminal moraine. They're all over Indiana, Illinois, Missouri. There's no question there was an ice age. When Noah gets off the ark, those ice caps were still huge, which means a whole lot of water is trapped in ice, which means the oceans are smaller, which means the continents are bigger. If the oceans are smaller, the continents are bigger, and you could walk anywhere in the world. It exposes the continental shelf. I would put more emphasis on that continental shelf, which is all over, all the continents. Like Pensacola, you got to go out 100 miles before it gets 100 feet deep.
Yeah.
100 feet. Yeah.
That was the most hilarious thing I'd ever heard, and it probably dawned on my atheist friend who then came to faith, was the refuting Pangea, right? Like when you say you take all the water out, it's just land down there. you know?
They say were the continents ever connected? I say, they still are. They're still connected right now. What do you mean were they?
So the Hovind theory states that something hit, and then the fountains of the deep broke open, probably in the mid-Atlantic ridge, right? You think that popped over and kind of pushed it?
Right. It's called the Ring of Fire. The Earth is cracked up all over the place. Just Google fault lines. You can see pictures of them. They're everywhere. But the main one is down the mid-Atlantic ridge. But it's the Ring of Fire. Goes all through Iceland. That's why there's all the volcanoes in Iceland. And just Google fault lines. San Andreas Fault goes through California. Yeah. I think you got some in Michigan. I had to look it up and see. Yeah. I don't know of any in Alabama. We're a pretty safe place for earthquakes here.
Sure. I haven't felt any earthquakes here, but I'm not sure. We've got the Great Lakes right next to us. I got Lake Michigan here. Do you think, and this is what I thought when I moved up here, because I'm originally from El Paso, Texas desert, and I moved up here about 7-8 years ago, and I'm in awe of this freshwater lake. And I look at it, and it looks like an ocean when you're looking at it. Do you think that's water remnant from the flood?
Yes, or from ice melting back. I believe during the flood, the whole world was fresh water. Noah did not have to bring water on the ark for the animals. I believe that Noah was smart enough at 600 years old to know to build that boat, plus God showed him the directions. If you build that big boat with holes in the floor, maybe every 100 feet apart, maybe 4 or 5 big 2-foot diameter holes, with a pipe coming up inside. Why would you do that? Every time you go over a wave, the water goes up and down inside those pipes. It's called a moon pool. Well, that would, A, pump fresh air in and out of the boat. B, it'd be a place you could just turn a valve and fill your watering troughs and have fresh water. Then the whole world was fresh water. After the flood, Noah gets off the ark, everything's fresh water. And you could walk anywhere in the world at the time. You could walk to Australia, because it's only 30 or 40 feet deep around Vietnam area. And then slowly the oceans have become saltier. As mineral salts wash in from the ground, the oceans are gaining salt. This is not a mystery. Everybody knows about that. And today they're 3.6% salt. They could have gone from fresh water to 3.6 in 4,000 or 5,000 years. That's just another indicator the Earth is not billions of years old. And then some animals had to adapt to that. We now have saltwater bass and freshwater bass. And they probably had a common ancestor called a bass. Okay, we have freshwater crocodiles and saltwater crocodiles. They might have had a common ancestor too, called a crocodile. I tell the atheists, going from a freshwater bass to a saltwater bass is a minor change. You think they went from a rock to a bass. Yeah. That's a major change.
Yeah. What have you heard of these I forget what the name of the sharks are, but they seem to be able to come in up the rivers. They've actually been spotted as close to Lake Michigan as possible, and I guess they're river sharks. Have you heard of those that can go back and forth between the salt water and the fresh water?
Right. Oh, yeah. I forget the name of it also, but there's a friend of mine up in North Alabama. He raises has a bunch of aquariums, and he sells the fish to pet stores or something. He said he had a bunch of, I think, what were they, blackwater or freshwater mollies or something. Anyway, he had, I wonder if they can get used to salt water. He took this aquarium and calculated how many gallons of water it has and how much salt. And he slowly added salt to his aquarium over a 2-week period. Over 2 weeks, they gradually got adapted to salt water. When he put them back into fresh water, they all died. So animals can adapt. Now, most of the animals that live in salt water, like the oceans, the salt is a nuisance to them. They have to get some way to get rid of it. Some make salt crystals come out of their eyes. Some have salt in their urine and they pee it out or something. Generally, the salt is a nuisance, even to saltwater animals. Now, they've grown used to it and they would die without it, but they still, and if you put them in fresh water, they wouldn't survive. But maybe if you took 2 or 3 weeks and gradually changed their salt, they could survive.
Yeah, I look at, Lake Michigan and I think, what an amazing, beautiful thing that you could, it's the remnants of the destruction, right? Here's this water, flood water, or from the ice, right? And it's still beautiful. That God is that magnificent. I just look at it that way. Yeah. So in the and the Hovind theory states that then the waters kind of kept going up and until the times of Peleg, right?
Right. In the days of Peleg, the earth was divided, and there's 4 or 5 different theories on that. One is that was the time when the Tower of Babel took place and the earth divided the languages. Another option is the water's melting, the ice caps are melting back and the oceans are coming up, and so now it finally divides the continents. Like between Russia and Alaska, the Bering Strait, it's 60 miles wide and only about 100 feet deep. Oceans average 12,000 feet. If you take out 200 feet, which is not much compared to 12,000, take out 200 feet, freeze it, stick it on the North and South Pole. That makes the oceans 200 feet lower, and everything is connected. You could walk anywhere in the world.
Wow.
Just 200 feet.
Wow.
I just Googled fault lines in Michigan. You do have a couple.
Oh.
You've had some earthquakes. Right where the thumb meets the hand up there. Looks like you got. Yeah. Are you close to that?
No, I'm on the opposite side on the West Michigan. So that's probably over on East Michigan, kind of Detroit area, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, they're showing fault lines right up. Can you put the slides up, Sergio? You know how to do that? Oh, I didn't make it into a slide. I got it on. I'm sorry. My computer's not showing. Never mind. Take it back off, brother.
Okay.
But yeah, you do have a couple, not many. California's got a really big one, the San Andreas Fault. Half of California is going to fall off. That's going to be a blessing.
So are you saying that when the meteor hit, it created all these fault lines? Is that what you're saying?
That's certainly one reasonable option. The Earth is cracked up. There are fault lines all over the place, hundreds of them. The main ones are what they call a ring of fire around the Atlantic Ocean.
Okay.
No, around the Pacific Ocean. Yeah. Goes through Japan. Japan has earthquakes and volcanoes all the time because of that. Let's see, ring of fire. Yeah. Anyway. All right. Anything else, brother?
Yeah, so as far as the there was nothing else from the Hovind theory that maybe you'd add from the previous videos,
I would add,
right?
Yeah, no, I would just modify a little bit that maybe the ice meteor, even if there wasn't an ice meteor, it wouldn't affect my theory. I think the ice canopy itself could provide the ice. There's a map of the fault line. Okay.
I remember, and it might have been back when you were in prison. I think your son Eric kind of had taken over the ministry for a little while, and he was together with, I forget who it was at the time, but they were kind of refuting the ice canopy idea at the time. Do you remember anything of that, or do you remember what? No, okay.
Some of the other creation ministries do not believe in the ice canopy theory. I think it answers some very simple questions. Because when it rains, it produces heat. It's called the latent heat of condensation. When continents are moving, it produces enormous heat. And the big thing the atheists pick on the creation is, oh, what about all this heat produced? Well, if the Earth had a canopy of ice overhead and the air is compressed into, say, 10 miles, when that canopy shatters, the air expands. That cools everything off. Get a can of hairspray or spray paint, anything with compressed air, and hold the button down. The can gets freezing cold in your hand.
Yeah.
When you release air pressure, it absorbs heat. So the release of the pressure from the air moving from 10 miles out to 40 miles or whatever it is now, that would absorb all that heat. So I don't think there's a heat problem. But if you type in creationist heat problem, the atheists are really making heyday out of that now. They think, oh, we got you. The flood can't be true. Because if it rained enough to cover the world, it would cook the world. And they're right. If it rained enough to cover the world. But see, most of the flood water came from inside the earth when the fountains of the deep broke open. It didn't come from rain. It rained for 40 days. The water kept coming up for 150 days. Not all coming from rain. So the atheists they're fighting a straw man there.
Speaking of the flood, the Noah's Ark, the Ark encounter in Kentucky, have you been there before?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Do you think it's a pretty accurate depiction of what the Ark would have been like?
I think they got a couple things wrong. I wouldn't fight him, okay? I recommend people go there. I doubt he recommends people come here, but I recommend people go there. Ken Ham does not use the King James Bible, which creates, I think, several obvious problems. The Bible says in the King James, God told Noah to build the ark with rooms in it. All the animals were friendly. All of them were vegetarian. His ark has cages because his NIV or whatever he uses says cages in the ark. Why would you need, if all the animals are friendly, if you want to go around and feed all those animals every day, just let them run loose. Drop some piles of food off on each floor. They go find their own, go back to they have rooms, not cages. I would strongly disagree with that. And God told Noah, you just open the door, I'll bring the animals to you. And in the King James, God, when it came time for the flood, God said to Noah, come into the ark. Where does God have to be to say that? Inside. All the other Bible versions say, Noah, go into the ark. To me, that's a big problem. The NIV in Genesis 1:1, King James says, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth, singular. Ken Ham's Bible says heavens, plural. You can't even go 7 words into the Bible before there's a difference. So like I said, I wouldn't fight him over it. He's an ally. During World War II, America was allies with the Russians. We disagreed. Well, weren't we? Yeah. We had a bigger enemy named Adolf Hitler to fight. Okay? So I wouldn't fight Ken Ham and those guys. I'm thrilled for what they do. I couldn't join them because of those differences, but I sure don't want to fight them.
So can you tell me just a little, I haven't been to your Dinosaur Adventureland yet, and I hope to make it out with my kids and all that out there and meet you in person and be there. Can you tell us a little bit about that? I've kind of looked on your website, but I don't really see everything that is there or isn't there, right? I haven't seen a lot of pictures. So can you just give us a little spiel about that?
Well, the 2 guys who can fix that are sitting right here, Joseph and Sergio. Let's get a whole bunch more DIL pictures up there.
Sorry, I didn't mean to get someone in trouble. No, it's the most fun place in the world. There's 140 acres, 17 lakes and ponds to fish or swim in, 25 cabins people can stay in, our 12,000 square foot science center. We give tours here almost several a day. We have Jeeps that we give tours in through the 140 acres. It's an old gravel pit, so it's perfect for going crazy on a Jeep. The fishing's incredible. One guy caught a bass. Let's see, that far from the boat. Oh, wow. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, can you RV park there, or?
Oh, yeah. We have 20 RV hookup spots. Bring your RV down. You can hook up. If you stay more than a couple of days, we'll give you a hammer or a shovel and put you to work. There's projects going all the time. The whole place has been built in 8 years. There was nothing here but mud and gravel pit, 8 years ago. I tell people we don't really have a plan. What I do, I eat a lot of pizza with peanut butter on it before I go to bed. And you wake up at 2 in the morning with wild ideas. That's how I got my daughter. Okay.
Is there anything that used to be in your old Dinosaur Adventureland that you don't have here that you wish you could?
Brother, that's a sad story. When I was in prison, my son stole everything from me. He started a new ministry and put everything in his name. All my museum stuff is still down there gathering dust. He called a couple months ago, talked. I said, Eric, would you please just send this stuff up? It belongs in, we should be used for the Lord. He said, you're right, Dad. I'll call some other creation ministries and give it to them. Anybody but me. It's just, I think my perspective is he stole it all. He knows he did wrong. He took advantage of it. Dad's gone. I'm in charge. I'm going to just change the title on everything to my name. 12 properties, probably $2 million worth of stuff. And then when I came home, first day, he said, Dad, you don't own anything here now. You got to pay, if you want to live in this house, you got to pay $600 a month to rent that bedroom over there. I said, son, I bought this house when you were 8 years old. And my wife said, I'm divorcing you because I'm scared of the IRS. We'd been married 42 years. Virgins on our honeymoon, never touched another woman. And I was just, I felt like Job. What's going on here? I lost it all, you know. And so I rented the other bedroom at my own house for a couple months and started my new ministry. I had to pay $1,500 to buy my website back off my son, drdino.com. He still has all the museum stuff, won't return it.
You're not using it either, right?
No, he's just sitting there gathering dust. I'm very tempted to do a YouTube, say, everybody call Eric and say, return Dad's stuff. You know?
Sure.
But all it would do is destroy his ministry. He's doing good for the Lord. Again, I don't want to fight him, but it's just plain theft. I mean, there's no kind way to say it. He's a thief.
When you did you see any indication of that before you went into prison?
None whatsoever. I was totally shocked. They picked me up at the prison. Jim Bob Duggar and Eric and my wife and a couple others picked me up, brought me home. I thought, I'm going to go back to work. Then I realized I had to get a new phone number. Just my phone number and website, Dr. Dino, had been advertised for years. I mean, I lost it all overnight. I had to pay to get my website back, Dr. Dino, $1,500 to get that name back. Still lost my phone number. Got a new one, 855-BIG-DINO, works out even better, but it used to be 850-479-DINO, 3466. So, yeah, it's just, I'm 70 miles away. He's never been here to visit me one time in 8 years.
Do you think he was a guy? People must have been in his ear, and obviously they must have thought something like, "Oh, Dad's putting us in danger" or something. I don't know. What do you think?
That's the cover story. Dad's putting us in danger because of his radical stance on things. Okay, well, if you don't like it, you're welcome to go start your own ministry.
Sure.
But not with all my stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't like the way I do it? Go start one.
Speaking of, I remember a video like the straw man, right? Do you think that had everything to do with them coming after you? Just curious.
Yeah, no question.
Yeah.
When they came to get me, they said, get every DVD number 5, which is the one where I talk about the dangers of evolution. See, when you're born, the government creates a straw man, artificial man, with your name in all capital letters. That's not you.
Yeah.
There is a giant conspiracy over control of the people. It's a pinky in the brain kind of thing. And it's going to get much worse coming soon. Yeah. But if when I learn something and I know that it's true, I teach it. If I don't know, I say, I don't know. A lot of things I don't know, but the things I do know, I want to share. Like the IRS is a private corporation, not part of the government. Yeah. The Federal Reserve is not federal. Federal Reserve is a private company.
I learned that from you, and I learned that from you long ago, and have since seen it and seen a lot more people start to realize this and come out, being outspoken about it. Do you? So, like your relationship with Eric, is it kind of like you say you talked, and we'll be done here real quick, but and you say you talked. Do you talk? Do you see your grandkids? How does that go?
No, only one of my sons, my oldest son, Andrew, and one of his kids have been up here to see me. The others, they don't come. My daughter hasn't talked to me one word in 8 years. I did her wedding on America's Funniest Home Videos.
Oh, yeah.
Have you seen that?
I think I've seen it long ago, yeah. Oh.
Yeah. Anyway, it's just so sad, brother. But God, like Job, he lost everything. What do? You move on.
Yeah.
My wife, Sandra, is way more than I've ever dreamed, okay?
Well, Dr. Kent Hovind, I'm so happy that you took my call. Hopefully I can get with you again. I love talking with you. Maybe we can talk about some other stuff. I had a bunch of stuff in my mind probably I forgot all about.
Okay.
But, yeah, gosh, I can't wait. Hopefully we can make it out this summer down there. We can meet in person. You can meet my kids. And my wife is a huge fan. She wishes she could be here, but we're homeschooling kids. So she's at home doing that. And she's like,
Okay.
tell them I'm geeking out about it, the whole thing. So thank
Well,
you
we need
so
to
much.
warn her. We need to warn her about our well water. We have, I think, the best water in the world. But I taught biology 15 years, and if you drink the well water, if she drinks the well water, either one of you, your babies will be born naked.
Yeah, good warning.
That's right. Be prepared, okay?
All right. Well, thank you so much. Hope to be able to talk with you again. Thank you so much for joining me
All right.
on this.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you, brother. All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.